The aroma of oregano and melted cheese wafted down the street. Papa Aldo's Pizza, the neon sign, buzzed invitingly, casting a lurid red glow onto the cracked sidewalk below. Inside, the small restaurant bustled with the usual Friday night crowd. Laughter mingled with the clatter of plates and the rhythmic hum of the ovens. Dough spun effortlessly in Aldo's flour-dusted hands, transforming into perfect circles. His smile, as warm and inviting as the pizzas he baked, never faltered as he greeted his customers.
Welcome to Papa Aldo's. What can I get for you tonight?
Little did they know, behind that smile lurked something far more sinister. A young woman, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone, hurried past the pizzeria. She was running late, her mind preoccupied with a million mundane worries. Her gaze swept over Papa Aldo's, without truly registering the sight. If she had looked closer, she might have seen the subtle shift in Aldo's demeanor. His smile tightened, becoming a grotesque parody of warmth. The rhythmic kneading of dough ceased, his hands gripping the counter as he watched her through the window. His eyes, now devoid of their usual kindness, followed her every move.
Why do I feel like someone is watching me?
A shiver ran down her spine, the uncanny sensation of being watched prickling at the back of her neck. She quickened her pace, her unease growing with every step. Aldo wasn't always a monster. He had been a child once, a chubby-cheeked boy who trailed after his father in their bakery. He'd inhaled the scent of yeast and sugar, his small hands sticky with dough. His world had been filled with the simple joys of kneading, shaping, baking. His father, a burly man with a booming laugh, had taught him the secrets of the perfect loaf. "It's all about the touch, Aldo," he'd bellow, his large hand enveloping his son's. "You gotta feel the dough come alive."
You gotta feel the dough come alive, son.
But time, like a hot oven, had a way of changing things. His father, once a pillar of strength, had withered under the weight of illness. Aldo, barely a man himself, had taken over, his young shoulders bearing the burden of grief and responsibility. The bakery failed, the for sale sign a cruel reminder of his loss. He found solace in the familiar rhythm of the kitchen, the feel of flour on his hands, the comforting weight of the rolling pin, the hypnotic dance of flames beneath the oven. Pizza, he discovered, was not so different from bread. It was a blank canvas, a vessel for flavor, a source of comfort. He built Papa Aldo's from the ground up, brick by brick, his hands calloused, his heart heavy. He poured his grief, his anger, his loneliness into every pizza he made.
Each pizza is a piece of my heart.
He crafted his days around a strict routine, the early morning trips to the market, selecting only the freshest ingredients, the meticulous preparation of the dough, the precise measuring of spices. It started subtly, a pinch of this, a dash of that, experimenting with new flavor combinations, pushing the boundaries of traditional pizza. He craved something more, something to set his creations apart. He wanted his pizzas to be unforgettable, addictive.
One night, a stray thought wormed its way into my mind. A dark, twisted idea that sprouted like a poisonous mushroom. I remembered a documentary I'd once seen, a gruesome tale of cannibals in a remote jungle. The thought, instead of repulsing me, filled me with a strange curiosity, a morbid fascination.
He tried to ignore the thought, to banish it to the darkest recesses of his mind. The last customer, a gaggle of teenagers smelling of cheap cologne and mischief, finally left. Aldo watched them go, a mixture of disdain and envy twisting his gut. They had their whole lives ahead of them, lives full of possibility, lives untainted by loss and failure.
I went through the motions of closing up, my movements mechanical, my mind a million miles away. I scrubbed down the counters, the smell of bleach mingling with the lingering aroma of pizza.
As the city outside settled into its nocturnal rhythm, Aldo embarked on his nightly ritual. He donned a heavy coat, obscuring his blood-stained apron, and stepped out into the cool night air. The streets were mostly deserted, the only sounds the distant wail of a siren and the rumble of the occasional taxi. He spotted her in a dimly lit alleyway, a young woman huddled beneath a flickering street lamp. Her face was hidden behind a curtain of dark hair, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She was arguing on the phone, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation.
I felt a familiar surge of excitement, a tightening in my chest that had nothing to do with anticipation. I moved closer, drawn to her vulnerability like a moth to a flame. Her voice, laced with tears, sent a thrill through me, a perverse symphony of despair.
He watched her for a long moment, his mind already crafting a plan. He imagined the fear that would flicker in her eyes, the taste of her terror, the satisfaction of silencing her cries. As he stepped closer, a sudden noise startled him.
A cat screeched from atop a nearby dumpster, its eyes glowing in the darkness.
Aldo swore under his breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. The woman, alerted by the sound, glanced up, her eyes widening as she caught a glimpse of his silhouette. For a moment their eyes met, hers wide with fear, his filled with a mixture of hunger and something else, hesitation.
He saw a flicker of his younger self in her terrified gaze, a reflection of the innocent boy he once was.
The moment stretched, a silent battle raging within him. The beast inside roared, demanding to be fed. But another voice, a faint whisper from the depths of his soul, urged him to stop, to turn back from the precipice. The hesitation vanished. A familiar coldness seeped into Aldo's veins, pushing aside the momentary flicker of guilt. He was the darkness, the predator. This was the path he had chosen, paved with blood and deceit. He lunged. The woman screamed, a shrill sound that echoed off the brick walls. He moved swiftly, his movements practiced, efficient. One hand clamped over her mouth, stifling her cries. The other, wielding the cleaver, flashed in the dim light. Her struggles were brief, futile. Back in the sterile confines of his kitchen, Aldo surveyed his grim harvest. His heart, usually pounding after a hunt, remained strangely calm. It was as if a switch had been flipped, transforming him from a predator into a craftsman. He donned his blood-stained apron, a macabre uniform for the task ahead. The cleaver, now washed clean, gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. He worked methodically, his movements precise, almost surgical. The air, thick with the coppery scent of blood, did little to dampen his focus. He was a sculptor, molding flesh and bone into something new, something extraordinary.
Aldo surveyed the finished product, a mound of ground meat, its color a shade paler than usual. He pinched a bit between his fingers, bringing it to his nose. The scent, faintly metallic, sent a shiver down his spine. It was perfect.
He mixed the meat with his own blend of spices, each one carefully chosen to mask the true nature of his creation. He added a touch of fennel, a hint of paprika, a generous dose of garlic. The aroma, now rich and savory, filled the kitchen, masking the faint metallic tang.
He worked through the night, his usual fatigue replaced by a manic energy.
Aldo slid the pizza into the oven, the intense heat a comforting presence. He watched as the cheese began to bubble and brown, the aroma filling the small kitchen. It was hypnotic, this transformation, this alchemy of flour, fire, and something far more sinister.
It's all about the touch, Aldo. You gotta feel the dough come alive.
But the life Aldo felt now wasn't the gentle stirring of yeast, the sweet promise of bread. It was a darker, more primal force, a current of fear and pain that flowed from his fingertips into the very core of his creation. He thought of the woman in the alley, her life extinguished like a snuffed-out candle. Was this her essence, he wondered, this unsettling energy that thrummed beneath his fingertips? Aldo retrieved the pizza from the oven, the heat radiating against his face. The aroma, usually so intoxicating, now carried a faint metallic tang, a subtle undercurrent of something off. He cut the pizza into neat slices, his hand steady, his heart thudding against his ribs.
He had to taste it. He had to know if his creation lived up to the darkness that bloomed in his soul. He selected a slice, the cheese still bubbling, and brought it to his lips. The first bite was a revelation.
The familiar flavors of tomato, oregano, and melted cheese were still there, but beneath it all, he tasted something else. A subtle tang, a hint of iron, a whisper of fear. A twisted sacrament. The pizzeria was bustling with the usual Saturday morning crowd. Aldo greeted them all with his trademark smile.
He watched as a young couple shared a slice of the special. Their laughter grated on his nerves.
They complimented him on the unique flavor. He accepted their praise with feigned humility. He was a baker, but also an artist, a priest of a twisted sacrament. Papa Aldo's legacy. The young couple finished their meal, wiping their hands on the checkered tablecloth. They were oblivious, Aldo realized, to the true cost of their meal, the lifeblood, the terror, the despair baked into the very crust. They tasted only the spices, the perfectly melted cheese.
He watched them leave, their laughter echoing faintly into the street, and he would remain, tethered to his oven, his cleaver, his terrible secret.
The bell above the door jingled again. A new customer approached the counter.
"One slice of the special, please."
He mumbled, his gaze drawn to the last remaining slice.
"Coming right up,"
Aldo chirped, his smile a grotesque mask of warmth. He picked up the slice, the weight of it strangely comforting in his hand. Yes, he thought, his legacy would live on, bite by delicious bite,